This is Everyday Tension. Real stories based on real experiences about everyday conflicts people rarely talk about. This story was shared anonymously. If you'd like, you can support the channel by liking or subscribing and let me know in the comments where you're listening from. Here's what happened.
The test came back positive on a Tuesday morning. I'd taken it alone, before work, and I just sat on the edge of the bathtub for a long time, staring at the two lines. My first thought was to call my mom. My second thought was a cold little trickle of dread, knowing I'd have to tell his parents next. I pushed that second thought away. I wanted to enjoy the good news first. I called my mom from the car in the parking lot at work. She screamed. She actually screamed, and then she cried, and then she asked me about 100 questions in 2 minutes. I could hear my dad in the background saying, "What? What is it?" And then his voice getting all thick when she told him. We talked for half an hour. I was floating. When I told my husband that night, he picked me up and spun me around. He had this huge, goofy grin. We ordered takeout and ate it on the couch, talking about stupid names and where we might put a crib. It was perfect. It was the kind of moment you think you'll get more of. We decided to tell his parents that weekend. We drove over on Sunday afternoon. My mother-in-law was in the kitchen. My father-in-law was watching TV. My sister-in-law and her husband were there too, just hanging around. The house always felt crowded, even when it was empty. It had this smell, like old cooking oil and too strong air freshener. We sat in the living room. My husband made a little small talk with his dad about some game. I could feel my heart beating in my throat. Finally, he just said it. "So, we have some news. We're pregnant." There was a pause. My father-in-law nodded slowly and said, "Okay, good." My sister-in-law said, "Congratulations," but it sounded flat, like she was reading it off a card. My mother-in-law was quiet for a second, looking from my husband to my stomach and back. Then she leaned forward, her eyes sharp. "Should I give you something so you deliver a boy?" The room got very quiet. The TV was still on in the background, some commercial with loud, happy music. I felt like all the air had been sucked out of me. I just looked at her. I saw my husband's face go stiff. He opened his mouth, but I spoke first. My voice came out quieter than I wanted, but clear. "I don't like comments like that. We'll be happy with a healthy baby. Boy or girl." She recoiled like I'd slapped her. Then her expression smoothed over into this wounded, innocent look. "I was just joking. Can't you take a joke? So sensitive." She laughed, a short, hard sound. "It was a joke. It wasn't funny," I said. I could feel my face getting hot. My husband put a hand on my knee. "Mom, come on. That's not something to joke about." She waved a hand dismissively. "You're all so serious." Fine. Congratulations." She got up and went back to the kitchen. The conversation was over. We left not long after. In the car, neither of us spoke for a while. Then my husband said, "She's just from a different time. She doesn't mean anything by it." "She meant it," I said. I was staring out the window. I didn't cry there. The anger was like a hard, cold stone in my chest. But when I got home and called my mom to tell her how it went, I broke down. I told her what my mother-in-law said, and I just sobbed. I couldn't stop. It felt like she had already put a stain on something that was supposed to be pure and happy. My mom was furious. She said, "Give me her number. I'm calling her right now." I was too tired to stop her. I just said, "Okay." Later that evening, my mom called me back. She sounded exhausted and confused. I talked to her, she said. She said she only said that because your husband doesn't like daughters. She said he told her he only wants a son. I felt the world tilt. What? That's a lie. That is a complete lie. He's never said that. He's talked about having a little girl more than a boy. I know, my mom said softly. I believe you. But that's what she told me. She made it sound like she was just trying to help you, to protect you from his disappointment. That was the moment something in me shut down. The cold stone of anger melted into a heavier, duller feeling. It was a realization. She wasn't just rude or tactless. She was a liar. She would construct a whole false reality, throw her own son under the bus, just to avoid looking bad, just to win. I thanked my mom and hung up. My husband came in and asked what was wrong. I told him what his mother had told mine. His face went pale, then red with anger. I'm calling her, he said, his voice tight. Don't, I said. It won't change anything. She'll just lie again. She'll say my mom misunderstood. Or she'll cry. What's the point? He argued. But in the end, he didn't call. He just paced around for a bit, muttering about how messed up it was. And that was it. That was the response. The pacing, the muttering, and then letting it go. I saw the pattern then, clear as day. This was how it was going to be. After that, I couldn't talk to her normally. My greetings became short, just hello and goodbye. I stopped asking her questions. I stopped sharing anything about the pregnancy. If she asked how I was feeling, I'd say fine and turn away. It was like I'd built a glass wall between us. I could see her, but nothing she said could reach me. She noticed, of course. She'd make little comments. Someone's quiet today. Or she'd sigh loudly and say to my husband, I guess I'm not good enough to talk to anymore. He would just shrug or say, she's just tired, Nom. He became the translator, the buffer. It was easier for him that way. The lying wasn't just her. It was the whole family. It was like their primary language. My father-in-law would tell long, elaborate stories about business deals that almost happened. People who almost gave him huge amounts of money. My sister-in-law would talk about her designer bags, but the stitching would be coming loose. My brother-in-law would brag about his job, but he was always borrowing small amounts of money from my husband, money we never saw again. They lived in a house that was often missing basics. There would be no fruit, no snacks, the cupboards kind of bare. But they spoke with this absolute superiority, like they were dispensing wisdom from a great height. They'd lecture us about saving money while asking for a loan. They'd tell us how to live our lives while their own seemed held together with tape and wishful thinking. The disconnect was dizzying. Then my husband had his accident. It was stupid, really. He was changing a light bulb in the garage, standing on an old stool. The leg gave way. He fell and broke his wrist. It was a clean break, but it hurt like hell, and he needed a cast. It was scary for a minute, hearing the crash and him yelling. But he was okay. Shaken up, in pain, but okay. We came back from the urgent care, his arm in a sling. He was pale and wanted to just lie down. An hour later, his parents showed up. They must have called a dozen times on the way over. My mother-in-law burst through the door, her eyes wild. She went straight to my husband, who was propped on the couch, and started crying. Big, loud sobs. My boy, my poor boy, look at you. He was embarrassed. Mom, stop, it's just a broken wrist. I'm fine. But she kept crying, hovering over him, not touching him, just wailing. It felt performative. It felt like she needed to be the most upset person in the room. I was tired. I'd been the one driving him, filling out forms, managing the insurance call, all while trying not to panic myself. I walked over and put a hand on her arm. "Mom, please, don't cry. He's going to be okay. I'm taking care of him." She stopped crying instantly. The tears seemed to shut off like a faucet. She turned her head and looked at me. Her eyes were dry and cold. "If you were taking care of him," she said, each word precise and sharp, "he wouldn't be hurt in the first place." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. I actually took a step back. My husband sat up. "Mom, what the hell is wrong with you?" "That's not fair. It was an accident." She ignored him, just kept looking at me with this flat, accusing stare. Then she sniffed and turned back to him, her voice going soft again. "Do you need anything? Is the pain bad?" She had moved on. The shot had been fired, and she was done. I went into the kitchen. I stood by the sink and gripped the counter. I didn't cry. I just breathed. In and out. I heard my father-in-law's low murmur and my husband's tired replies. After about 20 minutes, they left. My husband came into the kitchen looking exhausted and guilty. "I'm so sorry," he said. "She's insane. She didn't mean it." "She meant it," I said, for the second time in our marriage. It was becoming a refrain. She absolutely meant it. She thinks it's my job to prevent all bad things from happening to you. And if they happen, it's my fault. He didn't know what to say to that. He just shook his head. She's wrong. But he didn't call her. He didn't demand an apology. He just let it hang there, this ugly thing his mother had said, and expected me to let it hang there too, to absorb it, to get over it. The incidents piled up. They were never big enough, on their own, for a war. But together, they were a death by 1,000 paper cuts. We went over for dinner once, and my mother-in-law spent the entire meal telling me how to cook the dishes she'd made, even though I hadn't asked. "You have to learn this for my son," she said. "He needs to eat properly." Another time, she pulled me aside while my husband was talking to his dad. Her voice was low, conspiratorial, but her eyes were hard. "You must listen to my son in everything he says," she instructed. "A good wife is obedient. I don't want any complaints from you." I just stared at her. "We're partners," I said, my voice barely a whisper. She smiled, a thin, unpleasant smile. "You learn." When we got in the car, I told my husband. He sighed, a long, weary sound. "That's just how she is. She's old-fashioned. Don't listen to her." "But she's telling me not to listen to you." I tried to joke, but it fell flat. "Just ignore her," he said. It was his solution for everything. Just ignore it. Let it slide. Don't make waves. The problem is, when you're constantly ignoring things, you're constantly paying attention to them. You're always braced, always waiting for the next little barb, the next criticism disguised as concern. It takes up so much space in your head. I wonder whether you want to support your first appointment or how can you be done. I'd be at work, trying to focus on a spreadsheet, and I'd hear her voice. "If you were taking care of him," I'd be picking out paint colors for the nursery, and I'd see her face when she asked for a boy. It stole the joy from things. It made simple interactions feel like minefields. My pregnancy progressed. We found out we were having a girl. We were both thrilled. My husband bought a tiny pink onesie that same day. When we told his family, my mother-in-law's smile didn't reach her eyes. "A girl is nice too," she said. "Lots of work, but nice." Later, I heard her on the phone to someone, probably her sister, saying, "It's a girl. Well, maybe the next one will be a boy. As if my daughter was a practice run. A disappointment to be corrected. My belly grew. The baby kicked. My family threw me a shower. It was lovely. His family didn't offer. His sister gave us a bag of hand-me-down clothes from her kids, which was fine, practical. But it was just a bag dumped on our doorstep without a note. My mother-in-law called a week before my due date. "Do you have everything ready?" she asked. I said we did. "Good," she said. "I will come and stay with you for the first month to help." It wasn't a question. It was a declaration. A wave of pure panic washed over me. The thought of her in my space, my newly organized nursery, my kitchen, with her comments and her criticisms and her need to be in charge for a whole month, right after I'd given birth. I couldn't breathe. "That's very kind," I managed to say. "But we've got it covered. My mom is going to come by during the days for a bit." There was a long silence. "I am the grandmother," she said, her voice icy. "It is my right to help." "We just think it will be less crowded," I said, my heart hammering. With the baby adjusting and me recovering, it's a lot. "So you are saying I am a burden?" Her voice was trembling now, but with anger, not hurt. "No, I'm not saying that at all. I'm saying we have a plan. We will see what my son says," she snapped, and hung up. I told my husband that night. He looked pained. "She just wants to help," he said. "I don't want her help," I said, and my voice broke. "Please, I am begging you. Do not let her come stay here. I can't handle it. Not right now. I will fall apart." He saw that I was serious, that this was a line for me. He rubbed his face. "Okay," he said quietly. "Okay, I'll tell her." He called her the next day. I stayed in the other room, but I could hear his side of the conversation. It was all placating tones. "Yeah, Mom, I know you want to. It's just a really intense time. We think it's better if you visit during the days sometimes. No, it's not like that. She's not keeping you away." It went on for 40 minutes. When he got off the phone, he looked drained. "She's upset," he said, "but she's not coming." I felt a rush of relief, so strong it made me weak. "Thank you," I whispered. But the cost was clear. I was the bad guy. In her eyes, I was the controlling daughter-in-law who was stealing her son and her grandchild. The narrative was set, and my husband had to pay the emotional toll of managing her disappointment. I knew he resented it, even if he wouldn't say so. He resented being put in the middle. I started to resent him for resenting it. Why was I the one causing trouble just because I didn't want to be tortured during the most vulnerable month of my life? The baby came, our daughter. She was perfect. Everything else faded away when I held her. My mom came over every day for 2 weeks, doing laundry, making meals, holding the baby so I could shower or nap. She asked before she did anything. She just quietly took care of things. It was peaceful. My in-laws came to the hospital. They brought a bouquet of flowers that still had the supermarket price tag on it. My mother-in-law held the baby stiffly for exactly 2 minutes, then handed her back. "She looks like outside," she announced, though the baby looked like a squished red potato, as all newborns do. They stayed for 15 minutes and left. Their visits to the house were similarly brief and awkward. They'd sit on the edge of the couch, make a few comments about the house. "You should get a different rug," my father-in-law said once. Ask a few superficial questions about the baby, and leave. The tension was a physical thing in the room. My mother-in-law would look at me nursing with this disapproving frown. She never offered to help with anything. It was like they were visiting a museum, not a family. The resentment built slowly, brick by brick, inside me. It wasn't a raging fire. It was a heavy, cold weight. I resented them for not being the grandparents I wanted for my daughter, for making everything so hard, for living in this world of lies and superiority. I resented my husband for not shielding us from it, for asking me, over and over, to swallow my feelings for the sake of peace. The peace wasn't peace. It was just me, being quiet. One day, when my daughter was about 4 months old, my husband came home from work looking tense. "My mom called," he said. "They want to have a big family dinner next Sunday, for my dad's birthday. Everyone will be there." I felt the familiar clench in my gut. "Do we have to go?" He looked at me, and I saw his own frustration. "Yes, we have to go. It's my dad's birthday. What am I supposed to tell him? That my wife doesn't want to come?" "You could say we have other plans," I said, but it was weak. "We don't have other plans. Come on. It's a few hours. We'll go, we'll eat, we'll give him his gift, and we'll leave. I'll do all the talking. You just have to be there. Just be there. Just exist in that space, smiling politely while they talk around me and over me. While his mother shoots me those little looks, while I feel my skin crawl with the effort of pretending everything is normal." I looked at my daughter, asleep in her bouncer. I didn't want to bring her into that atmosphere. I didn't want her to feel that weird, cold energy, even as a baby. "I don't want to bring the baby," I said. Now he was really annoyed. "Why not? She's their granddaughter. They'll want to see her." "That's exactly why," I said. "I don't want her to be a prop. I don't want your mother handing her around like a trophy and then making some backhanded comment about her. Not yet. She's too little." He threw his hands up. "You are impossible. You're always looking for a fight with them. You're always assuming the worst. Because the worst is what usually happens." My voice was rising. The baby stirred. I lowered it to a furious whisper. "Every single time we see them, something happens. A comment, a lie, a dig. Every time. I'm not imagining it. So what do you want me to do?" he hissed. "Cut them off? Never see my family again? Is that what you want?" I didn't answer, because part of me did want that. A clean break. No more pretending. But I knew it wasn't possible. It wasn't realistic. He would never do it. And maybe that was the worst part, knowing that this was my life now, this endless, low-grade conflict, this obligation to people who actively made me feel terrible. This was what I signed up for when I married him. We went to the dinner. I took the baby. I wore her in a carrier the whole time, so no one could take her from me. I spoke when spoken to. I smiled small, tight smiles. My mother-in-law made a comment about how I was hogging the baby. I pretended I didn't hear her. The food was too salty. The conversations were about people I didn't know, gossip that meant nothing to me. My sister-in-law complained about her job. My brother-in-law talked about a new investment scheme that sounded like a scam. My father-in-law held court, telling the same story I'd heard 3 times before about a car he almost bought in 1998. I watched my husband. He was laughing at his dad's story. He was nodding along with his brother. He looked comfortable. He looked like he belonged. In that moment, I felt a loneliness so profound, it was like a physical ache. I was an outsider in my own family event, the mother of his child, and I was a stranger sitting at their table. We drove home in silence. The baby was asleep in the back. The streetlights flashed by overhead. "See?" he said finally, his voice careful. "That wasn't so bad." I didn't answer. I just looked out the window. It was bad. It was always bad. The bad wasn't in dramatic fights or slammed doors. The bad was in the quiet moments of realization. The bad was in the weight of all the unsaid things piling up on my chest. The bad was in knowing that this dinner, this exact feeling, would repeat itself for the rest of my life. At Christmas, at birthdays, at random Sundays. Forever. I am tired. I am so tired of being braced for impact. I am tired of the calculus I have to do every time we interact with them. What comment will she make? How should I respond? What will the fallout be? How will my husband react? I am tired of my husband's weary sighs when I bring it up. I am tired of feeling like I'm the problem, just because I won't pretend that everything is fine. I look at my daughter now. She's starting to notice faces, to react to voices. Soon she'll understand words. What do I do when she hears her grandmother say something sharp to me? What do I do when she's old enough to be given instructions on how a good girl should behave? The thought of their influence on her, however small, fills me with a fresh kind of dread. My husband loves me. I know he does, and he loves our daughter. But he also loves his family, or feels bound to them by a thick cable of obligation and habit. He exists in the middle, trying to keep everyone from getting too upset. I exist on one side, slowly hardening into stone. Sometimes I think about just giving in, smiling wider, laughing at their jokes, agreeing with their opinions, letting my mother-in-law tell me how to raise my child. It would be easier for him. There would be less tension. But the thought of it makes me feel like I'm disappearing, like I'm erasing myself to make room for their version of who I should be. So, I don't. I stay quiet. I stay guarded. I pull my daughter a little closer when they're near. I communicate in the bare minimum required. And the resentment grows on all sides. Theirs for me, for being cold and ungrateful. Mine for them, for making my life harder than it needs to be. And his, for me, for not making this easier on him. There is no solution. There is no big confrontation coming. There is just this, the phone ringing on a Sunday afternoon, and the tight feeling in my chest before I answer it. The drive over to their house, the quiet argument in the car about how long we'll stay, the smile I paste on my face when I walk through their door, the careful, neutral words, the countdown in my head until we can leave. This is my life now. It's not what I thought it would be. I thought marriage was about building your own family, your own peace. Instead, it feels like I'm permanently stationed on the outskirts of someone else's battlefield, waiting for the next small, silent explosion. And I just have to stand there and take it. Because what's the alternative? To force my husband to choose? I'm not sure I want to know what he'd choose. And that might be the quietest, most lonely truth of all.